Well, we are less than 2 months away from casting ballots to elect the next president of the United States. And one group being courted by both nominees is women. Minneapolis-based consulting firm Ginger just conducted its 4th annual survey on what women want. And Mary Van Note and Beth Jarvis from Ginger, they're here to give us some insight. Thank you, ladies, for joining us. So what do women want?
Well, alpha women want a perfect recipe for their president. We surveyed 400 alpha women nationwide in 10 cities, and they're alpha women because they're a little bit ahead of the curve of what the mainstream media is thinking, so they can kind of predict what will happen in the near term. And we said, hey, if you could whip up your recipe for the perfect president, what would it be? And these are women who are Republicans, Democrats, independents, and undecided. And they said, we have a very clear recipe, and there are 5 ingredients.
Okay.
So the first ingredient is, no surprise, the economy.
Okay.
70% of alpha women said, I want my presidential candidate, I want to be very confident that they can steer the economy. And this is because alpha women have their own economy to deal with. They have their own special interest groups and money coming in and going out, and they know that these decisions that are made on a national basis on the economy are really important.
What we have up on the screen right now is what we're talking about, the poll that you did. So why don't we back up a little bit and address the poll, because you found out that 70% of the alpha women want to have a roll-up-your-sleeves chief executive officer who's ready to tackle tough problems like the economy. So.
Yes.
So economy, jobs. So that's what they're talking about.
Absolutely, that's number one.
And really following close behind, 63% said compromise and working across the aisle. You know, women, when you think about it in their lives, they're running volunteer groups, they're running their households, they're running teams at work, and they don't have the luxury of not getting along with people and not getting things done, or just throwing up a roadblock and not making progress happen. So they are incredibly frustrated by sort of the vitriolic nature of how the campaigning has gone so far, and sort of a lot of, you know, getting down on the other guy as opposed to just laying out a really clear-cut plan on how they're going to move things forward. And they're saying, I need a chief executive who can compromise, who can work with the other side effectively and really get some stuff done, because we've got big issues to tackle.
Okay, so now let's go back to the recipe. And you're talking about the 5 ingredients.
And
then number 1.
Number 1 was the economy.
Confidence, yes, in the economy.
And then number 2 was this thing that Beth just talked about, which is this compromise across the aisle. And the reason they want you to compromise is because of ingredient number 3, and that's getting things done. Alpha women have the longest to-do list in the history of the world, right? It is like you just got them back to school, then there's pre-holiday, the list goes on, it's endless. I know the presidential list is long, but they want the president to check those things off.
Okay.
They don't have the luxury of, oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't work with Congress today, so I couldn't put dinner on the table. Right? We couldn't agree, Susie didn't get to soccer. I'm sorry, you got to get those things and check them off, and they want a president who won't just have promises, but will actually get things done.
So they got the track record and then the foreign policy expertise, and then...
Yeah, foreign policy is big. You know, sometimes we think that women are only interested in sort of bread and butter backyard issues, but really they realize we don't have the luxury of being isolationist here. We live in a global world, and we need a president that really has some serious chops in foreign policy. And then the other sort of counter to that is a real bread and butter thing, which is prioritizing spending for healthcare and education. And it's big because, no surprise, you know, when you think about it, healthcare costs have increased by a factor of, I think, 10 in about the last 25 years. They're increasing on a clip, and women are managing this healthcare line item in their own household budgets. And they're really frustrated. They're at a point where they're worrying about it taking a bigger and bigger chunk of their income and their household budget. So they really want someone that's got some brass tacks plans on how we can kind of tackle this, as well as education. You know, getting the student loans paid back, and funding pre-K programs and all the rest.
You also found some deal breakers as well.
Yeah. Right. So we asked, because there's so much negative advertising out there, we said, what's your deal breaker? If we found this out about your candidate, you know, what would you say no? And they kind of mirrored what we talked about in terms of the recipe. So if they found that a candidate, they were worried about how they would steer the economy, then that would be off the list. If they found that a candidate would be so rigid they'd be unwilling to compromise and work with the other party, off the list. If they found someone who would be waffling on issues, you know, one day it's this thing and the next day it's something else, then they get off the list. And finally, a really small minority, but 6% of alpha panelists said if there was some sort of personal scandal in the candidate's past that they were kind of concerned about, then they would not vote for that.
Yeah, I mean, they're looking for a values match, so they don't want some sort of shenanigans and untawdry stuff going on the side. So
we are out of time, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us. You got your alpha list, you brought it in. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Well, for an expanded look at the survey results, just go to Kare11.com. We'll be right back.